Outward is an open world role-playing game with survival elements and soul-like combat. It's a game that does not hold your hand. In fact, if you reach for its hand, it'll slap yours away, strike you across the face, spit in your mouth, and then kink shame you that you liked it. Now if you're into that kind of stuff, this might be the game for you. In my experience, this game is one of extremes. If you go into this game blind, it's very likely one or two things will happen. You either quit after a couple of hours because everything kills you and the game punishes you for things that you do not know yet, and it hasn't bothered explaining to you, or you deep dive into the wiki, follow a build to get overpowered early, and cheese your way through the game. It's a game of high highs and low lows, so let's dive into Outward's strengths and weaknesses. One of the things that it does really well is the early game. Whether you've gone in blind or know exactly what you're going to do, this is the most fun part of the game. Gathering gear, finding materials you need, and visiting different places makes the world feel alive, and at this point still very dangerous. Especially if you don't know what you're doing yet. The world feels like a hostile place because it is. There's an actual sense of progression in these first couple of hours. But once you're out of this early game and you got your build and gear figured out and you start reaching the mid and especially end game of Outward, this feeling of progression and exploration changes drastically. If you have your build complete with all the talents and gear that you wanted, your main goals just kind of disappear. If there's still anything left of it, you can complete your faction quest line, but those aren't long either. And sure, you can build the town in Caldera, but that's a drag, and to what end? There's nothing to do once the town is built. The early game of Outward is truly where the game peaks, and from there on it feels like it's downhill, with its absolute rock bottom being the town building in Caldera. Basically it boils down to that you run out of reasons to do things once you have your gear, weapons and money. Something else that Outward does do well is the way that it immerses you into the world. Although it's immersive in the same way that being dropped into the woods at night is immersive, like it's not necessarily everybody's idea of fun, but the different zones and their distinct biomes are well done. Especially the desert zone gave me a sense of urgency and I thought it looked brilliant. The weather affecting you is nice. Again, especially in the early game you feel this because you don't have the right boons, gear or food to deal with it yet. Once you're in the end game, these are more annoyances that make you go, yeah, better cast my cold boon. The world of Outward is simultaneously alive, but also empty. There are a bunch of interesting landmarks with dungeons to explore, but in between these there's usually just a big bunch of nothing. There might be some monsters roaming about or an ore vein to find, but there's very few things of interest happening between these landmarks. This high sense of immersion does get tedious at times. In between quests you often have to wait 3 in-game days before you can continue, which chronologically makes sense, right? But really I just want to continue the quest, so often I just ended up camping in front of the quest giver for 3 days, which in turn completely ruined the immersion that it aimed to realize. Which brings me to my next point. This game is just a running simulator disguised as an RPG. There's so much running and walking about in this game, going from one point to the next. There's no convenient way of fast travel in the game, leaving you to run wherever you go. At the start this is very immersive and you get sidetracked on fun adventures, but after a while it's just a hassle. Running for 20 minutes from one town to the other isn't quite that fun, especially if you have a build that uses heavy armor, which often has a penalty to your stamina use. So I hope you like the environment, because you're gonna see a lot of it. In between is running all over the map. You'll be fighting. If you want to, that is. You could skip most of the combat other than bosses in this game. I think that's for the best as well, because combat it's clunky. Some might have you believe that there's depth to it and it's skill based, but it's not. It's just a clunky system. You really have to get used to how the clunk works and how to exploit it. But once you understand this, there isn't really anything difficult about it. There's no fancy footwork required, just running away and dodge rolling will get you throughout the entire game. This doesn't make the combat unenjoyable though. I think the joy mostly comes from seeing your preparation and planning come to fruition. The visuals of combat are pretty well done, attacks are well animated, magic combat particularly looks good, and different combat styles have distinct and unique feelings to them. Playing through the game as a heavy two-hander axe wielder versus a quick and nimble mage really feels different and unique. And not only does it feel different, but it looks different. And this is one of the strong points of Outward. The gear in this game looks great. There are many different sets of gear and their distinct visual looks are well done. The armor sets are some of the most unique and badass looking sets that I've seen around. Having such great armor design makes it extremely disappointing that in a regular playthrough you won't see or use most of it. If you're playing through the game, chances are that you've got a solid plan of what armor you want to use, which weapons and talents. And there's no option to respec your talents, so these are set in stone once picked. And usually there is one obvious best in slot piece that goes with your build. So you spend the start of the game tracking this down, meaning that there's very little to no visual progression of your character. I think it would add a lot to the enjoyment of the game if you could see your character progress through gear rather than passives that add X percentage of damage or better food that basically just does the same thing. Monster design has the same feeling to it. There are many unique monsters that I can promise you haven't seen anywhere else before. Some of these Lovecraftian horrors are fit to haunt your nightmares, but it is mostly the same monsters that you see everywhere. A sense of progression here would be nice as well. Now all these different gear sets and combat options do make the game very replayable. Going through the story with a different set of talents, gear and faction lets you enjoy the game from a whole new perspective. I think what I missed most in Outward were restrictions. On the one hand, it's amazing that I can run to the end zone and get my hands on powerful gear right at the start of the game, but this also trivializes the sense of progression. I think that if Outward were to add restrictions in what you can and can't do, it would make it a much more enjoyable and challenging experience. I'd imagine something like weapon skills or levels that you require to wield armor and gear. Don't let me cheese through the game with an endgame weapon at the start. Force me to level up my axe skill until it's high enough to wield a stronger axe. This would at least partially fix the lack of progression. It's the same for skills like cooking and alchemy. There are so many strong potions and food that increase your power immensely. Make me cook and use the lower level food before I get access to these. Make me cook eggs and stews until I can actually use angel cake and whatnot. And you could do something similar for the zones. Force me to complete certain objectives or quests in the starting zone before I can leave it. This would add so much more to the feeling of immersion and exploration, rather than what most players do now, which is just run to a higher level zone at the start, get your gear, weapons, food and spells from there, and just cheese your way through the game. These are things I really hope they work on in Outward 2, which is set for a 2026 release, because it is a good game and I did enjoy it a lot. There's just lows that I really hope they improve on. But I think that's quite enough of me ranting. Let's summarize the strengths and weaknesses of Outward to form our final conclusion. Let's start with its strengths. It is a very immersive game. The world has a sense of discovery to it. Magic combat looks great. There's lots of different builds and variety. Its monster design is unique. And it's got a high level of replayability to it. Its armor design is really well done. And the early game / making your build is really the best part of the game. As for its weaknesses. The world can feel empty in between landmarks. There's a lack of game set restrictions, which leads to a lot of ways of cheesing the game. You quote unquote need the wiki to play. Sound design is mediocre at best. The faces of the characters, it's woof. The game often feels like a walking or running simulator. And there's a lack of gear and overall progression. With those strengths and weaknesses in mind, let's jump to our conclusion. Although Outward makes for an enjoyable playthrough, especially if you're a fan of quote-unquote hardcore games that don't hold your hand, it does feel like it lacks a middle ground where you can progress through it with in-game information and see your character grow and progress. Right now you either know too little to enjoy the game, or you know so much that you just cheese your way through. There is no middle ground where you're free to experiment and aren't harshly punished for this. It very much is a game where you're forced to play with the wiki open on your second monitor, because if you make a decision you are stuck with it. If you decide that you'd rather gone with a different talent breakthrough point, your only option is to create a new character. And I think this hardcore element turns a lot of people away from the game. You can clearly see this when you look at the global achievements as well. Only about 75% make it out of the starting town. That's about 10 or 15 minutes of gameplay. That's rough. Only 33% unlock mana, which is something you'd be doing in the starting zone on pretty much every character unless you're doing a very specific no mana build, which you probably aren't on your first playthrough. Only 3.4% enchant a piece of gear, which admittedly is more of a late game thing, but I'm not surprised that the percentage of people who do this is that low. The game starts out promising, but I think it manages to frustrate most players into quitting before they can see the good things it does have to offer. It's a punishing game, but it's punishing you for the wrong reasons. It's not punishing you because you made a mistake in combat, but because you didn't read up on the wiki page before making a minor decision. It's the kind of game that becomes good after hours of research and tens of hours of experimenting. But in all honesty, if it takes a game hours to be good, is it really good? To finish this review, I did enjoy my playthroughs of Outward. Quite a lot. But then again, I'm the kind of degenerate that likes reading countless of wiki pages to optimize a build before even loading up the game. If you're not into doing this for a game, this probably isn't one for you. It is a quote-unquote hardcore game, but the hardcore part is that it gives you homework to do. Well, that's it for this review. I've been Mojo, and I've very much enjoyed being on your second monitor as always. Have a lovely day.